This presentation is on the Global Matrix 3.0, International Results from 49 Countries. It's a reproduction of the presentation that was given at the Movement to Move event in Adelaide, Australia for the release of the Global Matrix 3.0. I hope you enjoy the presentation. A brief overview of what's going to be provided. I'll talk briefly about the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance report cards, the Global Matrix 3.0 process, the impact and growth of the Global Matrix initiative, the Global Matrix 3.0 findings, key messages, where you can find out more information, where to from here, and recognition of the country report card leaders. As a brief history, Active Healthy Kids Canada started developing a report card on the physical activity of children and youth in 2005 in an effort to power the movement to get kids moving. To date, more than 60 jurisdictions around the world have replicated the Canadian report card. The Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance was established in 2014 to facilitate international comparisons among report card groups, and a global matrix of grades was created. In 2018, the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance was incorporated as a not-for-profit organization. The report card assigns letter grades to different indicators grouped into categories. The grades are based on a synthesis and examination of current data against an established benchmark. Assessments of trends over time and the presence of disparities are also considered. Together, the indicators provide a robust and comprehensive assessment of physical activity of children and youth. In each jurisdiction participating, they establish a report card leadership committee. This committee should be national in scope, have cross-sectoral representation, be unbiased, transparent in their discussions, participatory, consensus-driven, and they must harmonize their processes with the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance. There were 10 common indicators used in the Global Matrix 3.0. They included 5 behaviors, that is, overall physical activity, organized sport and physical activity, active play, active transportation, and sedentary behavior. There was 1 personal characteristic, physical fitness, and 4 settings and sources of influence that were graded: family and peers, school, community and environment, and government. In addition to these 10 common indicators, countries were welcome to add additional indicators if relevant to their jurisdiction. I won't go through all the benchmarks, but on this slide we provide an example of 2. So for each of the 10 indicators presented on the previous slide, there's a definition provided. So, for example, overall physical activity. Physical activity is defined as any bodily movement produced by skeletal muscles that requires energy expenditure. And the same is there for organized sport. And then the benchmark against which the grades are provided is the percent of children and youth who meet the global recommendations on physical activity for health, which recommend that children and youth accumulate at least 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per day on average. So these benchmarks exist for each of the 10 indicators and were harmonized across all participating countries. All countries also graded in a similar fashion, and on this slide you can see the grading rubric, which goes from A+ as the best grade down to F as a failing grade. Incomplete, or INC, was also provided as an option for countries that had no information upon which to do the grading. So you can see the percentages that correspond to each of the particular grades, and those percentages are applied against the benchmarks like presented in the previous slide. You'll also see that we provided a corresponding number so that we could do empirical analyses based on the grades as well. Report cards are typically produced in 2 forms. a short form, which is a very public-facing summary type of document, like a pamphlet, and usually an accompanying long form that is much more like a research essay that provides all of the substantiation for the grades that are provided in the short form report. They are typically provided in both print and electronic format, and in many countries in multiple languages because of the cultures of the different jurisdictions. Many countries house their report cards electronically on their Active Healthy Kids country website. So for example, Active Healthy Kids Australia or Active Healthy Kids Ghana websites. The report cards serve as a public awareness mechanism and call to action through a nationwide media advocacy strategy, an accountability index for all citizens, a surveillance synthesis mechanism, an advocacy tool for physical activity leaders and organizations. It serves as a policy driver, a process for identifying research and surveillance needs, and a challenge to other countries and jurisdictions to implement similar processes to allow comparisons and to facilitate improvements. The process of the global matrices began in 2014 when 15 countries cooperated together to release their report cards together at a global summit on physical activity for children and youth in Toronto, Canada. The results of that were published in the paper that you can see on this slide, which is available through open access through the Journal of Physical Activity and Health. The release of the Global Matrix 1 was very successful, as this infographic shows. Now this infographic is focused on the Canadian report card, but you can imagine the other 14 report cards, if they had even modest success, overall there would be tremendous impact. So you can see here the number of copies distributed of the Canadian report card alone, the number of media impressions, and the deep editorial coverage that was provided in Canada, especially in comparing Canada to the other 14 countries. So building off this success, it was determined that we must do the Global Matrix again. So in 2016, the Global Matrix 2.0 was released. This time, not with 15 countries, but with 38 countries participating. Again, the results were published in the Journal of Physical Activity and Health through open access to facilitate access by people from all of the countries that participated, many of which were low and middle income countries that may not otherwise have access to journals like this. Again, the release of the Global Matrix was very successful. Here I show a slide that shows the media hits from each of the participating countries. And while you'll see many countries had no media coverage, you'll see that several countries did have media coverage, and in a few cases, rather substantial media coverage. Over 400 media hits in Canada, over 100 media hits in Thailand, which by the way is where the release was done in Bangkok in 2016. Again, very positive feedback. The experience was very good. The uptake was very good. The knowledge dissemination was very good, and it was agreed that we need to do this again. And so the Global Matrix 3.0 was prepared and released in 2018. You'll see this time 49 countries from around the world released at an event in Adelaide, Australia. Again, the paper with all of the detailed results is available through the Journal of Physical Activity and Health through open access. The goal of the release this time was to have even greater impact around the world, to reach more people, to increase the force of the call to action to try and reduce childhood physical inactivity around the world. You can see the growth in the number of countries participating in the global matrices. So in this slide, LMIC stands for low and middle income countries, HIC high income countries, VHIC very high income countries. And it doesn't matter which of these you look at as you go across 2014, 2016, 2018, they all increase. So you can look at the total going up rather substantially, but each of the other bars goes up as well, meaning that we've been successful in recruiting countries at all different levels of development from around the world. And I think this is particularly important for us to learn from one another about what processes, what features might help to assist in reducing childhood inactivity. This represents 25% of the world's countries, 64% of the world's population, and 47% of the world's land mass. You can also see the increase in the number of experts involved and participating in the global matrices, which is now numbering over 500 key leaders from around the world. This is a schematic of the Global Matrix 3.0 network, and you can see how we're touching almost all areas of the world and interconnecting people for potential collaboration, potential cross-fertilization, the potential to learn from one another. There's also been tremendous academic impact of the Global Matrix processes. There's been, to date, 179 conference presentations, including 7 keynote presentations, 60 oral presentations, and 112 poster presentations done around the world. There have been 84 peer-reviewed articles that have been published, accumulating a total of, well, as of August, 879, but now over 1,200 citations. There are also several examples of demonstrable impact of the global matrices in participating countries. For example, there's a national conference now created in Denmark specifically because of their report card. There's a new regulation mandating 1 hour of daily physical activity in public schools introduced in Chile as a policy result of their report card. In terms of surveillance, there's a nationally representative physical activity survey that was developed in China, Chile, and Thailand specifically to inform the report card. So this is surveillance that was non-existent before that resulted because of participation in the global matrix process. And an example of how this is expanded as well, in terms, not only in terms of the number of countries that have participated in the global matrix, but in the Netherlands, they produced an additional report card called the Report Card Plus, which focused on physical activity of youth with chronic conditions and disabilities, focusing on that particularly vulnerable group. People participating in the Global Matrix process have also been very happy with it, and so I'm showing on this slide the results from the Global Matrix 2.0 Leaders Survey. 81% of them felt that the Global Matrix 2.0 contributed to an increase in scientific knowledge and to powering the movement to get kids moving. 72% of the report card leaders thought the Global Matrix 2.0 provided other benefits to society, and nearly all expect their report card to have a positive influence on powering the movement to get kids moving. Using Canada as an example, you can see the media uptake of the Canadian report card across the 13 releases that they've done. And here in the red line, you see the number of media hits, which each represent an individual outlet covering the story. So that may be a radio station, a TV station, an online outlet, or a print media. And so you'll see in 2018, for example, nearly 800 media hits. So nearly 800 newspapers, radio stations, television stations, online news reports covered the Global Matrix release. And in the bars, you see the media impressions, which is the number of media hits times the reach of those particular media hits. And again, looking at 2018, you can see about 220 million media impressions in Canada alone. So to the Global Matrix 3.0. We began planning for this immediately after the Global Matrix 2.0 was completed. There were monthly e-blasts sent from the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance to all country leaders. Mentors were assigned to new countries doing report cards. 49 countries participated, 34 of which also participated in the Global Matrix 2.0, and there were 15 new countries. 517 experts from around the world involved. And this is what the Global Matrix 3.0 looks like. And I know this is too small for you to see, and this isn't even complete because 49 countries wouldn't fit on this. But this is a list of countries in alphabetical order on the left-hand column, and each of the 10 indicators across the top. And so these show the grades, the matrix of grades by country and indicator. These can be sorted in hierarchical order or in alphabetical order, whatever way you want to do it. And you can start to study patterns of differences that might be informative for future strategies to intervene. I'm going to go through the overall findings in a similar format in the next 10 slides for each of the 10 indicators. They'll all follow a similar format. So for overall physical activity, the benchmark was the percent of children and youth who meet physical activity guidelines. Data were available from almost 1.4 million children. The global average was a grade of D. In terms of Human Development Index variation, I won't read that out each time, low and medium income countries had an average of C-, high income countries D-, and very high income countries D-. So you can see the low and medium income countries doing slightly better. Not slightly, actually substantially better. That's about a 10 to 15% increase in proportion meeting the guidelines. Slovenia reported the highest grade of A-. 6 countries reported failing grades. Only 2 countries, just Botswana and Japan, reported incomplete grades, so suggesting there's at least some data available in most countries that participated. Grades were generally lower in low and medium Human Development Index countries, and a significant negative correlation was observed between HDI and overall physical activity grade. So in other words, as country development increases, physical activity grade decreases. Now on to organized sport and physical activity. The benchmark is the percent of children and youth who participate in organized sport and/or physical activity programs. The global average was a grade of C. The variation across country development, you can see low and medium countries a C, high income countries D+, very high a C+. Denmark had the highest grade of A-, and 12 countries had grades of B. So this is overall one of the higher graded indicators, pulled up, of course, by high-income countries that have rather well-developed sport participation systems. 7 countries reported incomplete grades. 12 out of the 13 top grades came from very high Human Development Index countries, while only 2 F grades, Lebanon and Uruguay, were from high HDI countries. There were significant positive correlations between the grade and HDI and country public health expenditures. Now on to active play. The benchmark was the percent of children and youth who engage in unstructured or unorganized active play for more than 2 hours a day. The global average was D+. Looking across the HDI spectrum, low and medium countries a C-, high countries D, very high D+. So again, we see the low and medium income countries outperforming the high and very high income countries. No countries reported a grade of A for positive play. The highest grade was B, which was reported in Ethiopia and the Netherlands. Notably, 29 countries reported incomplete grades, identifying the need for greater clarity on the definition and benchmarks and subsequent surveillance. Now to active transportation. The benchmark was the percent of children and youth who use active transportation to get to and from places that is the school, the park, the mall, friends' places. The global average was C. Low and medium income countries had higher grade, higher grade again with C+. High income countries C, and very high income countries C-. So you do see a gradient here that as development income goes up, grades go down. There was a wide distribution with A- in Japan, Nepal, and Zimbabwe, and F for Chile. Only Qatar and United Arab Emirates had incomplete grades for this indicator. Poor grades were reported in about half of the very high HDI countries. Countries with high grades came from very diverse climates, suggesting that weather isn't necessarily a key determinant. The grades for 3 countries in East Asia, that is Hong Kong, Japan, and South Korea, were generally better than grades from other countries, suggesting that there might be something that can be learned from people in that area of the world. On to sedentary behavior. The benchmark is the percent of children and youth who meet screen time guidelines. Global average was D+. Low and medium income countries C+, high D, very high D+. So again, we see this pattern of low and medium Human Development Index countries outperforming their higher counterparts. The highest grade was an A- from Bangladesh. 5 countries, including China, Estonia, Ethiopia, Scotland, and Wales, had an F grade, and only 3 countries reported incomplete grades. Low grades for sedentary behavior were positively correlated with overall behavioral scores, suggesting that it's not a bad indicator of overall physical activity behavior. On to physical fitness, the one individual characteristic that we studied. The benchmark was the average percentile achieved on physical fitness indicators based on global normative values. The global average was C-. Low and medium HDI countries had an F, though caution is provided here because only 1 country reported a grade. 1 low and medium income country reported a grade, so I wouldn't read too much into that. High HDI countries a D, very high HDI countries a C-. 27 countries had incomplete grades, so a lot of missing data here and an opportunity for better surveillance. Grades ranged from an A in Japan to an F in India. And there was a significant positive correlation with country public health expenditure and a negative correlation with indices of inequality, both the Gini index and the gender inequality index. Now to settings and sources of influence, family and peers. I won't read through all of these. Each of the next few have quite a few benchmark examples, but you can read through them to get an idea of what contributes to these grades. The global average was D+. Low and medium income countries D+, high D+, very high C-, so very similar grades here. 22 countries had incomplete grades. F grades were assigned for Chile, Ecuador, Ethiopia, Ghana, and Nepal had an A grade. Grades were negatively correlated with Gini and gender inequality indices. Looking at the school, again, many benchmarks there that you can read through. Global average of C. Low and medium income countries D+, high C-, very high C+. So here you see a gradient that might make some intuitive sense to you, that as the Human Development Index of the country goes up, the greater resources available, the opportunities at school are greater. The grades ranged from an A in Finland, Portugal, and Slovenia to D- in South Africa, United Arab Emirates, and the United States, with a relatively even distribution of grades by other countries. There's a positive correlation between grade and Human Development Index, and negative correlation between grade and Gini and gender inequality indices. So we're starting to see a pattern here with the inequality indices. Findings from the community and built environment. Again, many benchmark examples provided there. Global average of C. Low and medium HDI countries lower than high income countries, which were in turn lower than very high income countries. Again, this makes, I think, some intuitive sense that as resources are greater, the community and the built environment features will likely be greater as well, and that's what we're seeing. The grades ranged from an A in Sweden to a D- in Venezuela, with 13 incomplete grades. There was a positive association between grade and a whole bunch of things: Human Development Index, life expectancy at birth, mean years of schooling, gross national income per capita, public health expenditure, global food security index, and a negative correlation, as seen with the others, with the Gini index and gender inequality index. In general, there's a negative relationship with the overall physical activity grade. It wasn't significant in this analysis, but we've seen this before, that ironically, that as the community and built environment grade goes up, so in other words, desirable features or perceived desirable features of the built environment are better, the actual physical activity behaviors get worse or are worse. And finally, findings for government. The benchmark is evidence of leadership and commitment in providing physical activity opportunities for all children and youth. Allocated funds and resources for the implementation of physical activity promotion strategies and initiatives for all children and youth. Global average of C. Not too much variation across the human development indices. Denmark and Finland reported the highest grade of A-, followed by 13 countries in the B range. Only China and Venezuela reported F grades. 8 countries reported incomplete. The government grade is strongly correlated with community and environment grade and the sources of influence score overall, if we add together the family and peers, school, community, and the built environment. The lack of implementation noted by many countries, and there is a lack of implementation noted by many countries and a dearth of quality assurance or evaluation in most countries. So much more work needs to be done to assess the fidelity of potential strategies and policies from different countries. This slide provides a comparison between the Global Matrix 2 and the Global Matrix 3. I'd be cautious about reading too much into any trends you see. You will see some grades going down, some grades going up slightly, but remember the countries participating were in many cases the same, but there are also many new countries, and so changes in the overall grade may be influenced more by the new countries that are participating than by changes in the countries that are participating again. So I've got 4 key messages, high-level messages coming out of the Global Matrix 3. For the first time, report cards on physical activity for children and youth were developed in 49 countries across 6 continents. These results from the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance show us there is much we can learn from each other. The majority of children and youth are not active enough. They spend too much time in front of screens and have a low level of physical fitness. Different patterns were observed across the Human Development Index categories of the country. Countries succeeding overall, including Slovenia, Zimbabwe, and Japan, rely on very different approaches to get kids moving. What is consistent among them all is that physical activity is driven by a pervasive cultural norm. Being active is not just a choice, but rather a way of life. We need to make the active choice normal and habitual. Urbanization, mechanization, increased use of motorized transport, and excess recreational screen time have changed physical activity levels globally. Pushing back against these trends requires changes to the social and built environments. It will take many sectors of society working together to shift behaviors to get our children and youth more physically active. Their health depends on it. This challenge is worthy of our efforts. Now, global priorities for action that were identified through the Global Matrix 3 process, and by the participating countries. First, we need to create a global movement for comprehensive school physical activity programs that support and allow all children and youth to meet the physical activity guidelines through a variety of strategic interventions. For example, active recess options, physical activity breaks, compulsory physical education, and so forth. We need to create a global culture of active kids, active people, in all settings, prioritizing active transportation above other modes of transportation. We need to invest in comprehensive social interventions and research to improve implementation and uptake strategies to manage recreational screen time among children and youth. And we need to develop a standardized global surveillance system for physical activity and related indicators among children and youth to fill the gaps, especially in low and medium income countries. And finally, we need to evaluate the implementation, efficacy, and effectiveness of national strategies and policies. A few testimonials from participants of the Global Matrix 3. I'm very pleased and privileged to be part of the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance Global Matrix 3.0 initiative, which provides us with a unique opportunity to showcase physical activity status in children and youth in Bangladesh. The country report card will help us to advocate for increasing physical activity opportunities to make our kids more active. From the Lebanese leader. Our team is more than ever dedicated to ensure the first report card will be the launch pad for many necessary physical activity initiatives in Lebanon. We want our children and youth to reap the benefits of leading physically active lifestyles. And finally, from the leader of Uruguay, it has been a pleasure and an honor to take part in this great project. Thanks to that participation, Uruguay has established a start point to get children and youth more active. Being part of this project has allowed to connect people and join efforts to achieve the same aim around the world. And just a couple of examples of creativity and approaches that were taken in certain countries. This is the report card cover from the United Arab Emirates, which was actually produced as a book, as though it was a report produced by a child from the United Arab Emirates on the physical activity of children and youth. So a very creative process that reads like a storybook but provides all of their results. So you can see here an infographic that is within the story and the key findings across different indicators. Very creative approach taken by the UAE. In Canada, in addition to producing the report card, they inserted what was called a knowledge product, which included expert position statement on physical activity and brain health in children and youth, which concludes that for better brain health, all children and youth should be physically active on a regular basis. In addition to physical health benefits, physical activity also improves cognition, brain function, and mental health. So this was an additional product put in to draw people to the report card and its results, and to disseminate information that suggests that healthy physical activity patterns are not only good for the body but also the brain. And finally, in Brazil, the leaders there conducted systematic reviews of evidence to inform each of their grades, and each of those systematic reviews was subsequently published in a prominent scholarly journal in Brazil. So a summary of the outputs from the Global Matrix 3.0. There were report cards from 49 countries. There's a supplemental issue of the Journal of Physical Activity and Health, which contains the published Global Matrix 3.0 manuscript, as well as separate manuscripts focusing on just low and medium HDI countries, just high HDI countries, and just very high HDI countries. There were also published short manuscripts from each of the countries, 49 of them. There's the published full manuscript from countries in different journals. For example, in the Journal of Exercise Science and Fitness, 5 of the Asian countries published their full manuscripts in that journal. And then there was the launch of the Global Matrix 3.0 in Adelaide, Australia at the Movement to Move conference. The country report card leaders each presented posters at the Movement to Move event in Adelaide. These are also all available on the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance website. Most countries have dedicated websites where they have their report card information available. There was a promotional toolkit with resources available to all participating countries. Each country developed their own strategies to improve the grade, and we consolidated those together as global strategies to improve the grade. And there's an interactive Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance website at www.activehealthykids.org, which includes a page for each participating country with all of their country resources, not just from the Global Matrix 3, but Global Matrix 2 and Global Matrix 1 if they participated in those, all in one spot. So if you go to the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance website, you'll be able to easily find the Global Matrix. And here you can see the cover slide for the Global Matrix 3.0. And if you click on that, you can go in and you can see the Global Matrix. You can sort it whatever way you want. You can see that 49 countries participated from 6 continents, producing 490 grades. You'll also see in the middle of the slide there that you can look at the news release that came out. You can click in on participating countries and select the country that you want to look at, and the social media toolkit is there as well. If you click on the participating countries, you will go and you will see the flag of countries that have participated in any of the global matrices. If you hover over those, you can click on them and it'll take you to that particular country's website or website that we've developed with their information. And it will have all of the global matrices that they've participated in, each of the report cards they've produced, their results, testimonial from their leader, the priorities for improving the grade in that jurisdiction, and so forth. So for example, if you clicked on Canada from the flag page, this is what would come up, and you'll see, highlighted is the Global Matrix 3.0, but you could also go to the Global Matrix 2.0 or 1.0, and within each of them, you'll see the related links. You've got the short form version. In Canada, you have it in English and in French, the long form version in English and in French, the conference abstract that was produced, the poster that was presented at the conference, the host website, which in this case is Participactions for Canada. The actual grades are there. You see the top 3 priorities, and if you scroll down, there's much more information. And every country would have a similar page. We also produced infographics that provide summaries of the rather detailed information that's available on the Global Matrix. You can see 2 examples of them here. I know you can't read them, but they provide highlights similar to the key messages that I read out a number of slides ago. These are available on the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance website. They're available in English, French, and Spanish, I believe, at the moment. And continuing on with the summary of outputs from the Global Matrix 3.0, we have a Twitter handle, as you can see there, #GlobalMatrix. Please follow us on LinkedIn. There are 2 more forthcoming papers, one that will be examining the global impact of the Global Matrix processes to date. And subsequent to that, there will be a Global Matrix 3.0 evaluation paper once we have surveys done with all of the participating countries. There was also swag given out to all of the leaders of the country, and you might see them in airports somewhere near you with their Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance knapsack. There were several events at the Movement to Move conference surrounding the Global Matrix 3.0. I won't go through these. These are all in the past now, but this is what was provided for the participants at the release of the Global Matrix 3.0. So I encourage you to plan and watch for where and when the Global Matrix 4.0 will be presented, and hopefully we can see you there. I provide this visual just to mention that there is tons of information. There's a treasure chest of information available in all of the background work done by all of the countries, and much more data mining and data utilization to be done in the future to help power the movement to get kids moving. So in terms of next steps, we're continuing to promote and disseminate the Global Matrix 3.0 results, like is being done in this webinar. We want everyone to exploit the Global Matrix 3.0 findings and resources to help power the movements to get kids moving. There's post-release evaluation surveys that are just being completed, which will inform the evaluation paper. The evaluation and impact manuscripts, as I mentioned, are being done, and Global Matrix 4.0 planning is underway with release planned for sometime in 2021. So in summary, the Global Matrix 3.0 provides a comprehensive summary of physical activity behavior and sources of influence indicators from 49 countries around the world. Average grades for overall physical activity, active play, sedentary behavior, and physical fitness around the world are low or poor. The results suggest a complex network of strengths and limitations across countries, with some global patterns emerging when comparing countries clustered by Human Development Index. High inequality is generally associated with poor grades. Saw that across several of the indicators. We need to make the active choice normal, habitual, routine, and valued, not something associated with a special event. Global Matrix 4.0 planning has begun, and the Global Matrix 3.0 could not have happened without the country leaders, and I would like to just very briefly acknowledge them, and anyone watching this, encourage you to participate with your country or get involved with your country if it's already participating. So I'm showing this. Each of the country leaders received a certificate of appreciation. You can see this one for Dr. Natasha Schrantz, who was the leader of the Australian report card and the leader of the Movement to Move conference. And there she is. So for Australia, Natasha Schrantz. So in each of these, you'll see a picture of the country leader or leaders, and then the cover of their 2018 report card. From Bangladesh, two leaders, Riazuddin and Asad Khan. From Belgium, Jan Seggers and Crete Gordon. From Botswana, Don Glady. From Brazil, Diego Silva. From Bulgaria, Biljana Mileva. Myself, Mark Tremblay from Canada. Nico Aguilar Farias from Chile. Yang Liu from China. Chen Kang Chang and Qinglin Wu from Taiwan. Sylvia Gonzalez from Colombia. Ales Gaba from Czech Republic. Thomas Skofgard from Denmark. Susanna Adradi from Ecuador. Martin Standage from England. Jack Jermay from Estonia. Chalchiza Abdicha from Ethiopia. Tuija Tamelin and Katrina Campi from Finland. David Tevel from France. Yolanda Dimitriou from Germany. Regiocansi and Vida Nyawarnota from Ghana. Alun Williams from Guernsey. Stephen Wong and Wendy Huang from Hong Kong. Taran Katapali and Jasmine Borara from India. Chiaki Tanaka from Japan. John Scriven from Jersey. Patrick Abbey Nader from Lebanon. Arunas Emilia Genovis from Lithuania. Juan Lopez Taylor and Carla Galovitz from Mexico. Narayan Subedi from Nepal. Tim Tacken from the Netherlands. Melody Smith from New Zealand. Adi Fati Adeniyi from Nigeria. Paul Zambura and Agata Kortz from Poland. George Moda from Portugal. Abdullah Saeed Al-Mahani and Izeldin El-Jak Ibrahim from Qatar. John Riley from Scotland. Gregor Stark and Shonda Morrison from Slovenia. Vicky Lambert and Kathy Draper from South Africa. Yoon Soo Kim from South Korea. Blanca Roman Venus from Spain. Marie Loff and Christine Delisle Nystrom from Sweden. Paraj Saunam and Piyawat Katawangsa from Thailand. Tom Loney from the United Arab Emirates. Peter Kaczmarzik from the United States of America. Javier Brazo Seyavera from Uruguay. Marianela Herrera from Venezuela. Gareth Stratton, Larry Edwards, and Richard Tyler from Wales. Daga Makaza and Taru Manianga from Zimbabwe. Thank you to all involved in the Global Matrix 3.0, and thank you for your attention in this webinar. For more information, I encourage you to go to the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance website, and there you will be able to find out more information about participation in the Global Matrix 4.0 in the months to come. Thank you for your attention.